China and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the Millennials joining me today are Garrick Ross and, of course, our producer, Adam Katora. Just want to let you guys know Andrew, the Fuji Fulginiti, and Ryan the Squirrel Brady are on vacation this week. So we have Garrick Ross sitting in. How you doing, Garrick?
I'm doing great, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. Hopefully we have a good time today.
Absolutely. So first up, we have socialism and communism in China. Hong Kong is in chaos. And we actually want to set this up first because essentially what has happened is that China, mainland China, is trying to extradite so-called criminals from Hong Kong. And here, this is a good explanation. It says the protesters in Hong Kong had gathered late on June 11th to try to stop a debate in Hong Kong's legislature on an extradition bill. If passed into law, it would allow for the first time the sending of criminal suspects from the territory Hong Kong to mainland China, where judges explicitly serve under the absolute leadership of the Communist Party. This would be the first time that would have ever happened, and naturally, as you can imagine, the citizens of Hong Kong are not happy about that, and they've been protesting ever since. We have a clip actually to explain some of this, and here's the clip.
He's become the face of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. On Monday, student Joshua Wong was released from prison and walked straight into a media scrum where he called for the city's leader, Carrie Lam, to quit.
Hong Kong people will not keep silence under the suppression of President Xi and the Chief Executive Carrie Lam. Carrie Lam must step down. Otherwise, I believe in the next few weeks, before the 22nd anniversary of Hong Kong transfer of sovereignty, more and more Hong Kong people, not only 1 million or 2 million people, will come and join our fight until the day we get back our basic human rights and freedom.
Wong's release comes after organisers claim as many as 2 million people took to the streets of Hong Kong on Sunday. They were protesting about a controversial bill which would allow extradition to mainland China. Under mounting pressure, Lam, who's backed by Beijing, had already promised to postpone the law, but that wasn't enough to quell the anger.
So there you have it. You have Joshua Wong, who's one of the leaders of the protests against this extradition treaty with mainland China and Hong Kong. And he's talking about, and Carrie Lam, who's, of course, the current territory of Hong Kong's chief executive. By the way, she's not elected. She's not. She's appointed by Communist China. And all the people of Hong Kong want is they want to have their own sovereignty, and they want to have free and fair elections so they can elect their own chief executive or their own president or whatever they want to call the person, but they'd be elected by that person. So I'm really interested to hear about what millennials have to think about this, because as a baby boomer, I lived through the Soviet Union's rise and demise in the 20th century. And now we have a situation in China which is looking somewhat similar, not exactly, of course. What do you think about this, Garrick?
Well, I think, first of all, you hit on it when you said you're a boomer and you saw this fall of the Soviet Union, but you were also around for the Tiananmen Square protests, which I think we're looking at right now as our modern version of the Tiananmen Square protest. And I really want to take a moment. I think we got to acknowledge just how good of a job these protesters are in trying to achieve their goals. They're quite aware of the adversary that they're facing. They're going against, of course, the premiership of China. And what they're doing is they're going to places of high traffic and high volumes. They're going into airports, rail stations, where they're encountering a lot of these mainland China executives and travelers, and being able to kind of create this atmosphere where what they're doing in Hong Kong is going back to Beijing. It's going back to mainland China, hopefully inspiring others there to their travels.
Absolutely. And you know what? There's a wonderful, I have to tell everybody out there in podcast land, this is really important. There is one of the best articles in the Wall Street Journal about socialism and China that I have ever read. And it's entitled, What Socialism Meant for My Great-Grandfather. And it is written by this lady who it was accepted into the Wall Street Journal. And she says, I'm just going to read a little bit of it. And it says, my great-grandfather wasn't a wealthy man, but he was relatively well-to-do by the standard of his time. He lived in a small village on the east coast of China where everyone was related to everyone else. In an old photo, he looked handsome and scholarly. He hoped one day to become a government official. Unfortunately, the imperial court ceased to exist in China when rebels forced the last Qing emperor to abdicate in 1912. With no court to serve, he became a wheat farmer. After the Communist Party took over in 1949, it pushed for land reform, the Communist Party pushed for land reform to win the support of the country's 300 million landless peasants. The party claimed landowners were the class enemies and exploiters of the poor, and that unequal land ownership was the main cause of social injustice. Though many villagers shared similar economic conditions, a government worker came to my great-grandfather's village and divided everyone into 5 classes: landlords, rich, peasants, middle class, poor peasants, and laborers. Then a work team organized speak bitterness struggle sessions so that the poor could vent their frustrations against the rich. At first, villagers hesitated to speak ill of one another, especially for their family members in public. But the work team was good at stirring up envy and greed and inflaming hatred toward any villager who owned property. My great-grandfather often had to stand in front of the village with his head bent, listening to his neighbors and relatives accuse him of wrongdoings that were grossly exaggerated or plain false. That folks out there in podcast land is just an excerpt from this wonderful article about what happened in the Communist Revolution and how they separated people, and they used envy and greed and showed and they created classes of people, and they had people go against one another. Honestly, for me, it sounds a lot like the Democrat Party. In fact, the person in my lifetime that I remember who tried to build up that idea that you were you should be disconnected from everything that you've achieved in your life is Barack Obama. And so this kind of class warfare has a history in the United States. And we're talking about Hong Kong versus communist China because I think that we're having the same problem at home here with the Democrat Party, which identifies in many ways with the socialist and communist tendencies of China. Thoughts on that, Garrick?
Certainly. I mean, look at a lot of the major candidates that are going on in our election this year. Bernie Sanders is actively supporting programs that would be a mirror to this. And I mean, what you just talked about, this cultural revolution, that was the precipice of the Great Leap Forward, which cost estimated conservatively 30 million people their lives off socialist programs. And to bring these kinds of policies here to the United States.
30 million people died because of it.
And that's an undervalue.
Some say as many as 50 million.
50, 60 million.
Yes, and they were murdered simply because
they all went hungry. There was no winner in this. The government sowed division. Neighbors hated each other, and in the end, people died.
In some cases, they were murdered because they didn't agree with the Communist Party, of course.
Of course.
And in America, of course, we have a Democrat Party that has a history of thinking that socialism and even as far as communism is a good idea. We have a clip of, in my mind, somebody who probably did more damage to the American psyche than any other president of the United States, and that's Barack Obama. And here's that clip.
If you were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help. There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we have that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Actually, you did build that, Barack Obama, because that is exactly what they did in communist China. They tried to separate people from their achievements, and then they turned people against one another and saying, you don't have anything to do with your achievements. Someone else made that happen. You're not responsible for all the good things that have happened in your life as well as the bad things. Someone else has done all of that. That has done so much damage to the American psyche. It's really the catalyst that got me going in this particular field. Thoughts on that? I want to hear the millennial thought on this.
And there's a big reason that China is successful today, and that is because with the Great Divide in the Soviet Union, China did for a long time abandon a lot of these socialist sentiments and this communist sentiments. They moved to a primarily capitalist form of government, and that's why they're seeing the economic gains that they had at this time.
With communist control, of course, laid over top of it, and of course, if you dare say anything. But you know what, Mitt Romney, that was Barack Obama in 2012. Mitt Romney rebutted that statement of Obama in 2012, and here's Mitt Romney. We have a clip on that.
I've got to be honest. I don't think anyone could have said what he said who had actually started a business or been in a business. And my own view is that what the president said was both startling and revealing. I find it extraordinary that a philosophy of that nature would be spoken by a president of the United States. It goes to something I've spoken about from the beginning of the campaign, that this election is to a great degree about the soul of America. Do we believe in an America that is great because of government, or do we believe in an America that's great because of free people allowed to pursue their dreams and build their future?
There you have it. And of course, that election at that particular moment in time was Mitt Romney's to win or to lose. And for whatever reason, he lost that election. I think a lot of people know why. I don't think he fought all the way to the end. But he really did a good job framing what we believe as American citizens. And I really think that's important. But of course, the socialist tendency of the Democratic Party go back to Hillary Clinton when she said in 1996 at the Democrat National Convention, she said, "It takes a village." We have a clip on that, and here she is.
It takes a village.
So here's what we're trying to do, Garrick, is we're tying in modern day China and the issues that they're having with Hong Kong and Hong Kong's having with modern day communist China with the current Democrat Party, which basically finds nothing wrong with what's going on in China and with our relationship with China. In fact, we saw that. Go ahead. You have something, Adam?
Yeah, I just got to cut in. I mean, I think what Hong Kong is at its very nature is the epitome of everything that's wrong with China and the communist system. Because here's Hong Kong, it's technically a part of China, and China's doing everything they can to make people think of Hong Kong like they're trying to erase the border. They want this extradition treaty so they can silence dissidents. Because Hong Kong is kind of more capitalist. They're showing that, look at how prosperous Hong Kong is. Yeah. It's the exact showing you everything, like all these communist, all the socialist policies, they fail. Meanwhile, you have Hong Kong surrounded by communist China, and it's the shiny
And Hong Kong
jewel.
uses the American dollar for trading.
They use the American dollar, yeah.
So they're very Western in nature, of course.
Yeah.
And which is why they want to maintain their sovereignty. Garrick, you had something?
No, I mean, I'm certainly fired up, by the way, listening to that Mitt Romney quote. That was something else. But I mean, again, I think Mitt Romney's sentiments are easily applicable again to this election. I mean, I call it the great race to the left. I mean, look at how many of these candidates are really coming out and they're really embracing heart and soul these kinds of policies. But, look at these protesters again in Hong Kong. What are they doing? They're standing out there, they're playing the Star-Spangled Banner and waving an American flag in the face of the Chinese government.
Exactly. And the thing is in 2016, Donald Trump brought this up during the debate with Hillary Clinton. He brought up this being the issue with China, how they are stealing jobs, how they're stealing technology, how they require transfer of technology in order to open a business there. And of course, Hillary kind of poo-pooed it, and Trump was saying, look, we need to renegotiate all the deals. And we have a clip over this debate with Trump and Hillary back in September of 2016. Here's the clip.
Well, you haven't done it in 30 years or 26 years.
Well, I've been a senator,
You haven't done it.
And I have been a Secretary of State, and I have
Your husband signed NAFTA, which was one of the worst things that ever happened to the manufacturing industry.
That is your opinion.
You go to New England, you go to Ohio, Pennsylvania, you go anywhere you want, Secretary Clinton, and you will see devastation where manufacturing is down 30, 40, sometimes 50%. NAFTA is the worst trade deal maybe ever signed anywhere, but certainly ever signed in this country. And now you want to approve Trans-Pacific Partnership. You were totally in favor of it. Then you heard what I was saying, how bad it is, and you said, I can't win that debate. But you know that if you did win, you would approve that, and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever top NAFTA.
That is just not accurate. I was against it once it was finally negotiated and the terms were laid out. I wrote about that in...
You called it the gold standard.
You
called it the gold standard of trade deals. You said it's the finest deal you've ever seen.
No.
And then you heard what I said about it, and all of a sudden you were against it.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality, but that is not the facts. The facts are, I did say I hoped it would be a good deal, but when it was negotiated, which I was not responsible for, I concluded it wasn't. I wrote about that.
So is it President Obama's fault?
Is it President
Obama's fault?
Even announced. Look, there are
Secretary, is it President Obama's fault?
She jumps around that one.
There are
because he's pushing it.
There are different views about what's good for our country, our economy, and our leadership in the world. And I think it's important to look at what we need to do to get the economy going again. That's why I said new jobs with rising incomes, investments, not in more tax cuts that would add $5 trillion to the debt.
But you have no plan.
Oh, I do.
Secretary,
in fact,
you
I
have no
written
plan.
A book about it. It's called Stronger Together. You can pick it up tomorrow.
That's about all you
folks.
At the bookstore.
So there you go. There you go, folks. That I have to tell you that particular moment and that particular debate was a watershed in American history with respect to relations between China and the United States. Because therein, you got to see two candidates, one who said, you know what, we're going to remain cozy with China, even though we know they're ripping us off and they're gutting the heartland. And then we have another candidate saying, you know what, we have to wake up and look at what's actually happening. Garrick, thoughts on this? I mean, this is important stuff.
I think President Trump's foreign policy objective here, I think, is a far important thing that we need to address as a country. We're talking about tariffs often in the news and the negative impact that that's had on a lot of our farmers and a lot of our industries, but you have to look at what we're trying to achieve here. And our foreign policy goals here are simple. We really need to take China head on. And the only way for us to do that is to be able to shift our economy away from their control. We need to take it back. We need to reinvest in our jobs here domestically, but we also, if we are going to use these cheap labor apparatuses, we have to spread it to our allies in the Pacific and strengthen them in their fight against China and their dictatorship, as well as strengthening our position against China.
Sure, and there's this thought also that the Chinese are not just stealing our technology, but that a lot of American politicians are co-opted by the Chinese because they're getting wealthy through backdoor deals with the Chinese. And I think that...
You mean Joe Biden?
Yeah, which we're going to talk about later, of course. But this is important stuff because so many folks know that things have been going wrong for so long. And of course, you know, the Democrats say, and to be fair, some Republicans say too, well, you know what? You're the one that wanted this. You wanted the cheap stuff that you're buying at Walmart. You wanted the cheap stuff that you're buying at Sam's Club. You know what we really want? We don't just want the cheap stuff. We want more than that. We want jobs. We want good jobs. And to the extent that those jobs have been stolen from China and literally stolen, or American companies or multinationals are intentionally moving those jobs offshore, it just really hasn't been good for the United States. And of course, then we have Elizabeth Warren. So of course, we're talking about the Democrats and how they've tilted left towards socialism and, you know, kind of dancing with the communist government as well. Elizabeth Warren said the other day, I believe it was in New Hampshire, she said, Ronald Reagan once quipped, the most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Elizabeth Warren said, these famous words aren't as terrifying as, I'm from the government and I don't care. You know what, Elizabeth Warren? Actually, the most terrifying words in the English language are, congratulations, President Warren. Those are the most terrifying words in the English language. And we have a clip on Ronald Reagan who said the 9 scariest words in the English language. Here they are.
I think you all know that I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
There you have it. That's Ronald Reagan. And of course, she's basically saying, no, that's not what we should say. We should say instead that government is here to care. Government matters. Let's continue to grow government. Let's look a lot more like communist China and just grow government so that they're in every aspect of your lives. And to be fair, I haven't heard Elizabeth Warren say communist China, but certainly socialism, full-blown socialism, because she's all in with Bernie Sanders on everything that has to do with socialism, in which case you would have to give up all your property rights because by the time you paid all the taxes to support all of her plans, there would be nothing left. But I want to get Garrick's reaction on in my opinion, one of the greatest speeches in American history, and that was Ronald Reagan on January 20th, 1981, talking about the issues that we still care about today as conservatives, and here's the clip.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else?
And there you go. Ronald Reagan on January 20th, 1981, during his first inauguration speech when he was elected after beating Jimmy Carter. You know, Garrick, presidents don't talk like this anymore. They don't speak this way.
I wish they did.
And talk about that, because I really want to hear what millennials have to say about that. Because obviously this is a time when we look back at and we just say, wow, couldn't a president articulate his words like this?
He certainly was ahead of his time too, because I think that applies today. I mean, look at these three industries where government is got their hands all over it. Let's look at pharmaceuticals, let's look at healthcare, and let's look at education. I mean, the costs to all these things are skyrocketing in the United States, and we're having less and less choice, less and less options, and we're being forced to pick a few things simply because the government is overreached. I mean, guaranteeing student loans has caused the price of college tuition to skyrocket 300, 400% year after year. They're having to put tuition caps, which don't even achieve their policy goals either. I mean, they certainly kind of stimulate a lot of these problems.
Exactly.
Government is not the answer. Government is the problem. It was right back then. It's right now.
I love hearing, I'm a baby boomer. I love hearing millennials say that. Thank you. And we apologize for the scratchy sound of that, but that's just the nature of the not so great audio.
That's just what everything sounded like in the 1980s, right, Mark? Just the ever-going soundtrack for it.
Thank you, Adam Katora, producer. Gee, thanks a lot. Showing my age. So next up, it's talking about China. Huawei, a Chinese company. It's a Chinese telecom company. They make telecommunications equipment for cell phone networks. They have been helping African governments spy on their political opponents. And in particular, in Uganda, they have been surveilling political opponents for quite some time. Now, as you might imagine, Huawei, this Chinese equipment maker, is also doing it in China. They're doing the same thing in China. Everything from surveillance technology to AI to facial recognition technology, you name it. We actually have a clip on this. It is absolutely fascinating. Here it is.
She explains that Huawei installed and trains the police to use a network of 5,000 cameras as part of a program called the Safe City System. This monitoring system is one of Huawei's flagship products, and it's already rolled out across China. In promotional videos, the company claims that its cameras, equipped with artificial intelligence, can help police catch criminals even before they commit crimes.
This man is very suspicious.
But activists like Dorothy Mukasa say the system is not only being used to make the city safer.
Everybody wants a criminal-free city. We've seen government target opposition more than criminals. So they will confine you to your home, make sure you don't mobilize.
And the government doesn't only watch what activists are up to, it also taps their phones to listen to their conversations. A former official who helped run one of the government's surveillance programs agreed to talk to us. He asked us to conceal his identity.
So there you have it. You have Huawei, a Chinese telecommunications company that is putting this technology in Africa, and they're doing it very quietly, of course, and they're helping African governments that are in power currently, these are usually strong men that are in power, basically spy not just on their political opponents, which is bad enough, but also spy on the people for anyone who, of course, disagrees with them. And if you're wondering why the folks in Hong Kong are so concerned about staying independent and keeping their own sovereignty, it's because they know that the communist Chinese are up to no good, not just in their own homeland, but throughout the world. Thoughts on this, on about, do you find this scary at all? Because millennials love their cell phones. We know that.
Oh, I'm certainly very scared. And if you think this is a problem in Africa, just imagine what this would be like in America. And you got to think about it. We're about to go through a 5G revolution. We're going to have a whole new series of broadband infrastructure going on here in America. And Huawei is the largest technology producer in China, is going to have their hands right here trying to pick off a lot of contracts in order to do this in America. And if you want them having access to our technology, our phones, our data, you're in for a scary world.
And the thing is Donald Trump, go ahead, Adam.
The thing is, can we be sure it's not already here in America? I'm sure.
We can.
Are you guys aware of FaceApp? It's that.
Yes,
the Russians put that on.
Exactly. So I don't remember exactly, but I believe it's a Russian company. And if you take a picture of it, they own all your data.
Yes.
There's another thing too. AWS, Amazon Web Services, they have their own pay as you come and go machine learning face recognition software called Recognition.
Wow.
So you pay literally pennies on the dollar to run images, and it detects images for you, and it's pre-built machine learning software.
And here's the thing. The Trump administration banned Huawei's equipment in the United States. Does anyone here, and does anyone out there in podcast land think for 1 minute that if a Democrat were elected instead of Donald Trump, that they would have done the same thing? They wouldn't have. they would have said, you know what, we're going to continue to embrace China. Come on, Huawei, install all that 5G technology so you can now spy on all of American citizens. And then, you know what, who knows what could happen after that. And so this is, in my mind, this is an epic battle, not just for the people of Hong Kong. This is an epic battle for the people of the United States. And it also reminds me of the Tom Cruise Minority Report movie, right? Whereby in the Minority Report, you would arrest people based on thought crime, kind of like a 1984 thought crime, before they actually committed the crime, because you're like, well, you know what? They have a face that looks like they're going to commit a crime. No, but of course, in communist China, and the whole purpose of Huawei is what you're really trying to do is identify your political opponents, and you're trying to monitor what they're saying, what they're texting, what they're emailing, and that way you can arrest them or make them disappear. Right?
Now, I know people are going to try to say, oh, the Minority Report, that's just a movie. But with red flag laws and with this machine learning technology we have, is it really that much of a leap to say, will businesses or will the government try applying it?
Exactly.
That's a scary thought. Arrest you before you've committed a crime.
Exactly. And then next up we have Joe Biden, his son, another Chinese story. His son is linked to the sale of a sensitive tech company to China. And so Senator Grassley was writing to Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and he noted that Rosemont Seneca Partners, which was established by John Kerry's stepson, Christopher Hines, and Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Vice President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, among others, joined with the government-run Bank of China to create Bohai Harvest RST, or BHR, in 2013. The fund openly advertised its unique Sino-US shareholding structure, as well as its lucrative global resources and network. In 2015, the company and the state-owned military contractor Aviation Industry Corporation of China jointly purchased the company, the US-based automotive company that creates dual-use technologies that have civilian applications and military applications. And needless to say, Hunter Biden and Christopher Hines made a lot of money from this. And here we have another situation. And of course, this had to be approved by the Obama administration, of course, because this was a tech transfer issue, and naturally they approved it. And we actually have a clip of Joe Biden, of course, talking about, China's not a threat. I mean, here it is.
Look at who we are. I've met virtually every major world leader in my role as vice president and as foreign relations chairman over the last 30 years. And that's not hyperbole. Virtually every one. I don't know a single solitary one who would not change places with the problems the President of the United States has versus the problems they have. China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They can't even figure out how to deal with the fact that they have this great division between the China Sea and the mountains in the west. They can't figure out how they're going to deal with the corruption that exists within the system. I mean, they're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not competition for us.
Yeah, they're not competition for us, and they're not a threat, and they're not bad. Of course not. According to former Vice President Joe Biden, they're not a threat. Garrick, come on, millennials, help me.
I mean, come on. I mean, I'm not even young enough. I can still remember in 2012 when they laughed Mitt Romney out of the room because he said that the Soviet Union was the precipice of the foreign policy objectives that we need to go after and that they're an issue. But here we are again, 2018, and China's not going to take our lunch. I mean, Joe Biden has been on the wrong side of just about every single foreign policy gaffe in the last 30-something years.
Except when it comes to profiting, right?
I mean, I think it's absolutely disgusting that the vice president of the United States' son was able to leverage his dad's title in order to get millions of dollars on the taxpayer's dime.
And herein lies to me the most dangerous part of what's happening in the United States of America, and that is we have a Democrat Party who is aligning itself with communist China and aligning itself with many of the socialist values of communist China and, of course, the former Soviet Union. And at the same time, behind the scenes, they have relatives that are profiting and transferring valuable military technology to the Chinese and saying, they're not a threat. Because they're not a threat. Oh, by the way, elect me for president of the United States because they're not a threat. Does anyone out there in podcast land think for 1 minute that if there were a President Joe Biden, that he wouldn't eliminate all of the tariffs, he would get rid of those, he would restore China back to where they were before Donald Trump? In fact, the Chinese have a policy. It's called Restoration 2020. This is a thing, folks. And Restoration 2020 is basically, you know what? We're China, and we want to make sure that we have the same relationship we had prior to the Trump administration. We want to restore that for 2020, so we do not want Donald Trump to win. That's the Chinese mantra. So, and if you want to learn more about technology, well, we also have Peter Thiel. So Maria Bartolomeo interviews Peter Thiel on social media on the news recently, and Peter Thiel talks about the suspension of Mitch McConnell's Twitter account. And the history of this is, the background is Mitch McConnell had protesters outside of his home who were threatening him and his property. So they were outside of his home, and they were literally threatening his property, and they were threatening him personally. So McConnell's like, you know what? I'm going to tape you on my phone. So he videotapes the protesters on his phone, and then he posts it on Twitter. And then Twitter, of course, promptly suspended his account. Why they suspended it? I mean, who knows? There are these large tech companies who I don't know. Apparently, they only believe one thing. Peter Thiel is the one man in Silicon Valley who's willing to speak out about this, and we have a clip on that, and here it is.
So I think there's always an inside and an outside question. The outside question is, what are these companies doing with China? Are they censoring speech? And the Twitter McConnell thing, you could say it's an innocent accident, or is it an intentional act of political sabotage? Which of the two is it? And I think one of the reasons the Republicans are so skeptical of the excuses big tech has for these repeated accidents is that the inside story is not good. Because on the inside, Twitter's not a company where you have lots of people writing checks to Senator McConnell. If you had a lot of campaign donations from Senator McConnell, we might say, well, to Senator McConnell, we might say this is sort of an innocent mistake, and we won't complain about it too much. That's not what's actually going on, and it has sort of the feel of a very unhealthy one-party state in a way that's not good for Silicon Valley or for the politics of this country generally.
So China is using technology for the perfection of dictatorship. And here in the United States, there's the possibility that social media companies are using their power and leveraging it for the perfection of socialism and a one-party system. Millennials' thoughts on this. This is important stuff.
I want everybody to just kind of take a moment and think about what just happened. The Senate Majority Leader of the world's paramount democracy had his Twitter account suspended arbitrarily without any review. I mean, think about what kind of a precedent this would be if this could happen to anybody. You, me, we post something against the state, and they don't like exactly what we said, and it just goes flying right under the rug.
Exactly. I mean, social media companies, I want to hear Couture on this too, our producer, but social media companies have such enormous power, and thank goodness for Peter Thiel, who's actually willing to speak out against this, because here's a guy who is in many ways not someone he would think would be a Republican, because he's from Silicon Valley. He created many tech companies. He was an early investor in PayPal and in Facebook, and he made most of his money from PayPal, and then he invested it in Facebook. Obviously made a lot of money from that, but he's out there basically going against the same people that have made him rich because he sees there's a problem. Thoughts on this, Couture?
Look, we have numerous instances of big tech companies censoring one side of the debate. Recently, you had on YouTube, you had Steven Crowder getting demonetized.
Exactly.
Accusations of his stuff being shadow banned. On Reddit, you have the pro-Donald Trump subreddit, the Donald, being quarantined is what it called. And Reddit's reasoning for quarantining the Donald was because they were posting anti-police materials.
Incredible.
Now imagine that. A lot of the people I know that are pro-Donald Trump that are conservative are some of the most pro-police, pro-law enforcement people I've ever met. And so on the left, you hear all these people complaining about, Russian interference, this and that. But I think we really need to look at how much these tech companies that control what we see, what we consume, what media we watch and hear, how much influence they have over us as well.
Absolutely.
If it's a level playing field, then let ideas battle it out.
Yes, it's called free speech. We're supposed to be willing. We're supposed to be able to say whatever we want. Here we have people in Hong Kong who want free speech, and they think that this extradition treaty, and they're absolutely right, is going to end free speech as they know it. They're already feeling the pressure from mainland China. And we have the United States tech companies that are cooperating with China, the Democratic Party, which is cooperating with China and embracing socialism, and basically not even speaking out against these tech companies who want a one-party system.
And even if you think that you're on the right team and you're like, oh, this isn't a problem, it's just conservatives and, they're terrible and whatever. I mean, this has happened to people even on their side of the aisle. I mean, Dave Rubin, a noted liberal scholar and YouTube host, had his account demonetized simply for just even entertaining a question.
And tell people out there in podcast land, what does demonetization mean?
It means his way of life and his livelihood is centered around him profiting off of his YouTube shows and things like that because they give him advertising and revenue costs because
and
a lot of people, and they just stop it.
They stop it, so he can no longer make a living.
And he can appeal it all they want, but they ultimately hold all the power. They can just ignore you for heaven's sake for no reason.
Right, try calling someone there. No one answers the phone.
There's no real legal, there's no court you take this to either. At the end of the day, it's YouTube, which is Alphabet, Google, decides, and it's they decide it, so no money for you.
Absolutely.
Your livelihood, one day it can be there, the next it's gone.
And next up, we have a funny story. So the Federal Aviation Administration and the Department of Transportation, you're going to find this hard to believe, okay? They have approved officially this week miniature horses as service animals. Miniature horses as service animals. In the United States, that means you can bring a miniature horse on a plane with you. We actually have a clip on this from a lady who has a miniature horse, and here it is.
I really wish that I didn't have to take an animal everywhere just to be able to be semi-functional. The attention that comes with it is very unfortunate, and honestly, I really hate it.
Bria Hensley takes her mini horse Flirty everywhere.
Flirty.
The movies, grocery shopping, or even the doctor's office.
I was actually just seeing one of my specialists today, and without me prompting her, she commented that I wouldn't be alive without Flirty.
Flirty is Hensley's service mini horse. She suffers from a variety of ailments, including depression, severe anxiety, panic disorder, and PTSD.
So I have no doubt that she needs a service animal. I'm not sure why she needs a mini horse instead of just a dog, of course. But the thing is when she goes out and she's trying to pick somebody up and she's in a bar, it's like, hey, meet my mini horse, Flirty. It's like, oh, well, anyway, okay. So what do you guys think about this? Because this sounds like millennial stuff to me.
First, I don't want to discredit service animals.
Agreed.
There's definitely service dogs out there that help if people have a seizure.
100% agree. 100% agree.
What is a mini horse going to do?
Thank you. Other than poop a lot in an airplane.
I was going to say, could you imagine walking onto an airplane? You're starting a 4-hour flight, and the first thing that you see is just a big old mini horse sitting there. And mind you, service animals don't get seats all the time, so they're sitting in the aisle. They're on standby. They're walking around
on your lap.
So you got Trigger next to you. I mean, there's actually a lot of pictures on Facebook where there's a service animal. He's standing on the floor, and obviously there's not probably enough space for him to lay down because there's no space on planes as it is even to sit down for people, let alone for a service animal like a mini horse. And you look at these pictures and you say, I hope the guy bought the whole row to fit his service animal there, because what if he had to sit next to him? I mean, it used to be bad enough you sat next to somebody that weighed 400 pounds, but now you got a service animal right in front of you.
And horses smell. They're just, to be blunt, they reek.
I mean, do they put a large pouch under the service animal to make sure it catches, if he urinates or if it defecates? I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, I agree with you, Adam. We need dogs as service animals. There are legitimate reasons to have them. I never have had a problem with that. It makes perfect sense. But mini horses, it just sounds like it's a fad. It's like, well, I've got a mini horse. You got a dog. Ha, ha, ha. Right?
I mean, at a certain point, can't you just find an alternative way to travel if you need to bring an entire miniature horse with you?
Well, I mean, and also the lady was shopping, the lady from the clip, she was shopping, of course, and it was a place that had food, among other things. And so what if the mini horse poops in a food store? I mean, it's just ridiculous. So anyway, enough of that. So next up, we have the dumbest bill in America. That's right, the dumbest bill in America. We promise to bring that to you every single podcast. And Adam Couture, we always ask him about, we want special music for the dumbest bill in America. We've had different choices over the past, podcasts. What do we have? Do we have something? Same one?
It's going to be a throwback to last week. You know what? Let me put a poll out there. We'll see what the audience thinks.
Very good. Okay.
Let's try it again.
All right.
Mr. Madison, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but...
So, we have the dumbest bill in America. I love that clip. I love that. That'd be great for the prelude for the dumbest bill in America. And it is sponsored by Senator Elizabeth Warren, again, and Congresswoman Haaland. And it's entitled Honoring Promises to Native Nations Act. And it's to address chronic underfunding and barriers to sovereignty in Indian country. Now, the reason why this is the dumbest bill in America is because we have Elizabeth Warren, who has used the Native American tribes her entire life to get ahead. Everybody knows this now. She's used them her entire life. And now suddenly, since she's running for president, she's trying to get cover by saying, oh, by the way, even though heretofore I never put any kind of legislation in to help Native Americans, I'm doing that now because I'm Native American and I really did care about them, even though I've used them all these years to get ahead and never really visited any kind of Native American territories before. Thoughts on this, guys?
If she really wanted to help Native American causes, she would stay as far away from these initiatives as possible, because if anything, just attaching her name to it makes it just so unbelievable and nobody can really buy into it. Like, we all know what you're doing. You're just trying to, save face. And look, let's be honest here. Like, Native American issues are certainly very important. They've gotten a very bad shake over the course of American history, and there's certainly a lot of ways that we need to right some wrongs there. But Elizabeth Warren trying to save face for her presidential bid by putting this bill out is just a slap in their face.
She's certainly making a mockery of the bill now with her possible ulterior motives there. So.
Exactly. And it's really well put, Garrick, because here you have all these Native American tribes throughout the United States, and I'm sure many of them do need assistance, more assistance than what they're being given. And I think most people would agree with that. But the idea of Senator Elizabeth Warren being the person to head that is just a joke, because her entire life she's had that opportunity, as she's claimed that she's part of a Native American tribe, and she's done nothing.
And she took a seat from somebody who rightly deserved it.
Exactly. Well said. Absolutely.
I'm not a mind reader, so I can't tell if she truly believed that growing up. But the way she's handled this since she first got called out about it, like, first she tries to take a 23andMe DNA test and makes a full produced documentary. And the guy telling her, the guy that did her forensic results, I don't remember if you guys saw the video, but his quote almost verbatim is, "You are most certainly, definitely, possibly 1% Native American." And it's like the most qualifiers you can put on it. And she's proudly proclaiming this, like, look, I'm true. Donald Trump's a liar.
That's right. See Harvard, you're not going to expel me from Harvard from all the clubby things there, since I'm actually not lying about it.
Somebody who truly believed that and truly believed it growing up, I don't think they would do all that stuff and kind of backtrack as much as she has.
100%.
So that's just my 2 cents.
Well said. Well, that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. Special thanks to Garrick Ross.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
Wow, you did a great job. I really appreciate you being here. And of course, our producer, Adam Couture. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. See you next time.